Father Returning Home by Dilip Chitre.
Hello. Today I am doing a poem, Father Returning Home, by the poet Dilip Chitre. Dilip Chitre was an Indian poet of the post-independence era. He was a critic, a painter, a filmmaker. He did his works in two languages, Marathi and English, and so he's called bilingual. This particular poem is an autobiographical poem where he narrates his story of his memory of his father returning home. This poem consists of 24 lines broken up in two verses of 12 lines each. The first part is describing his father's journey home, and the second part is describing what his father did when he was at home. This is a poem of free verse, that is to say, there is no rhyme scheme in this poem. This poem has another characteristic. What is enjambment? Enjambment is a sentence without a pause which goes beyond the end of the line. So you will notice that the sentence ends on the next line. This poem teaches us some values.
My father travels on the late evening train, standing among commuters in the yellow light. Suburbs slide past his unseeing eyes. His shirt and pants are soggy and his black raincoat stained with mud. And his bag stuffed with books is falling apart. His eyes, dimmed by age, fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. Now I can see him getting off the train, like a word dropped from a long sentence. He hurries along the length of the grey platform, crosses the railway line, enters the lane. His chappals are sticky with mud, but he hurries onward. Home again, I see him drinking weak tea, eating a stale chapati, reading a book. He goes into the toilet to contemplate man's estrangement from a man-made world. Coming out, he trembles at the sink, the cold water running over his brown hands. A few droplets cling to the graying hair on his wrist. His sullen children have often refused to share jokes and secrets with him. He will now go to sleep, listening to the static on the radio, dreaming of his ancestors and grandchildren, thinking of nomads entering a subcontinent through a narrow pass.
I will now go through the poem in detail, line by line, and explain it to you. The first stanza. My father travels on the late evening train. So his dad is returning home from work. And if you know the trains in India, they're overcrowded. So in all probability, the train journey is not a very comfortable one. Standing among silent commuters in the yellow light. So the train is lit with yellow light, and the commuters that are traveling in this train are silent, each of them stuck in their own thoughts of how their day has gone, how their work day has happened. Suburbs slide past his unseeing eyes. Because this is a routine journey that his dad is making, his dad does not spend too much time looking outside the window and admiring the scenes that are passing by. His shirt and pants are soggy and his black raincoat stained with mud and his bag stuffed with books is falling apart. So you look at the different things that he describes in these 3 lines. His pants are soggy. This is referring to the fact that it is the rainy season and the dad's pants are wet with the water of the rain. His black raincoat stained with mud. So he has not walked in a very nice area, and that is why the mud has splashed up on his black raincoat. His bag stuffed with books is falling apart. So the bag that the man is carrying is a small bag, and the books seem to overflow from it. His eyes, dimmed by age, fade homeward through the humid monsoon night. So, the gentleman is an older person, still working, but an older person. Probably his eyesight is not very good, and his eyesight is further spoiled by the rainwater that seems to fall and the humidity that surrounds the air. Now I can see him getting off the train, like a word dropped from a long sentence. Look at the simile that the poet uses to describe his dad getting off the train. Now he is getting off the train like a word dropped from a long sentence. So his dad in these 2 lines seems not to be of any consequence. Nobody knows him, nobody sees him, nobody recognizes him. He is inconsequential in the crowd that he is walking out of. He hurries along the length of the grey platform. So along with the throngs of people, his dad is walking out of the platform to reach his destination, which is his home. He crosses the railway line, enters the lane, his chappals sticky with mud, but he hurries unaware. So he has crossed the railway tracks, he has entered the lane of his house, and the gentleman is dressed in chappals. And that's why probably the muck has been flipped onto his raincoat. But the gentleman is unaware. His whole idea, his whole goal is, I want to reach home. We come now to the second stanza. Home again, I see him drinking weak tea. So his dad drinks a light cup of tea when he returns home, eating a steel chapati and reading a book. This line tells us a lot about the situation that the poet's father has walked into. Eating a stale chapati, even though he is the working member of the family, no fresh food is kept for him. And nobody is there to have a conversation with him. And so the man sits and reads his book. He goes into the toilet to contemplate. So, like most men in India, they want that time after they return home, a little time to unwind. And the poet's father gets into the toilet and probably sits there and thinks and goes through his day and goes through his thought processes and his feelings. Man's estrangement from a man-made world. This word estrangement refers to a break in a relationship. So in all probability, the poet's parents are not together, and this thought process seems to roll into the poet's father's head. Coming out, he trembles at the sink, the cold water running over his brown hands. A few droplets cling to the graying hair on his wrist. So when he comes out, his hands seem to tremble. Is it a trembling that is caused by age? Or is it a trembling that is caused by the cold water that he is washing his hands in? And the suggestion that the man is older comes through the words, the graying hair on his wrist. His sullen children have often refused to share jokes and secrets with him. So this line seems to indicate that the man does not have a close relationship with his children. Now, in most homes in India, you will know that the man of the house seems to keep himself slightly away from the rest of the family. And so close bond has not developed with the children and the father. He will now go to sleep listening to the static on the radio. After he has spent his evening rather alone, with a lot of loneliness and alienation from his family, the man now is falling asleep on his bed. And what is his company when he is falling asleep? It is the sound of the radio, dreaming of his ancestors and grandchildren. So his thoughts go into his past, of his ancestors, his parents, his grandparents, and probably even of his grandchildren, the future, the grandchildren that he has. And because he doesn't have a close relationship with his children, in all probability, his grandchildren are also not very close to him. Thinking of the nomads entering a subcontinent through a narrow pass. And he recalls how he was part of a tribe that entered India through a narrow pass. And he thinks of how history has moved on and how he finds himself today in a world working for his family, yet so alone. Living in a house with his children, yet facing loneliness. The poet is trying to tell us about the loneliness sometimes that people go through when relationships are not built. Even though they work hard, even though they are of use, even though their age and experience may be something that we can learn from, very often in our own homes, we don't look and talk to the people at home. The poet is making us aware of these things that sometimes we don't pay attention to. I do hope you've understood the poem and enjoyed learning it with me. This is Teacher Grandma, a teacher for 34 years and a grandmother of 2 pretty little girls, saying bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Do like, subscribe and share.